Welcome to Bold Talk series, where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Sergey Davidovich, chairman of SparkBeyond. Sergey, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you, man? It's been a long time.
Yeah, hi, Epi. Thanks for inviting me, and indeed, it's been a while.
Yeah, well, Sergey, there's lots of things you've done in the past. You co-founded Sarah Analytics and AI Ventures over the years. What first drew you to the idea of pushing the limits of machine creativity, and how has that curiosity evolved through your journey?
Yeah, so the journey started around 12 years ago. It was before the generative AI revolution, right? So back then, when you said AI, it most likely referred to predictive analytics, right? When you have a certain outcome, whether it's sales or the weather, you want to predict it. The output is, in most cases, a number or a category, right? Nobody could imagine that machines could come up with creative ideas on their own. Now it's much more natural, right? Because generative AI is synonymous with AI today. What we've identified more than a decade ago is that there needs to be a category, right? What the technology behind that category was still unknown back then, but there needs to be a category of and capabilities that would allow businesses to understand root causes, to understand what drives their performance, and to understand the factors behind outcomes. And to do this, you need a different machinery than what you need in order to predict outcomes. You need the ability to ask questions, not one question, but billions of questions. Each hypothesis, each question that the machine would come up with needs to be tested on the data in order to discover the truth.
Yeah, which is lead me to like your last venture that you started, SparkBeyond. This is how we got to how we connected the first time. And when you look back at the early days of SparkBeyond, what was that defining moment when you realized this the company that could change how enterprise think about optimization and performance?
Yeah, I would say that there are a couple of defining moments. The first one was the realization that code that exists on the web and the GitHub and the other open source universes, basically they include the building blocks of ideas, right? So almost any idea that you have, you can express as code, right? And people have already written those building blocks. So if we explore new, novel ways to combine them, maybe one of those ideas, right, if we can scan them fast enough and systematically, maybe one of those ideas may lead to a breakthrough or a certain discovery. That was the first defining moment. And the second one was when we worked with a large retail chain and we helped them discover certain factors that influence their strategy for opening new stores or making some inorganic decisions that led us to the understanding that people want ideas and want the ability to shape the future, in many cases, more than being able to predict the future. So that was the aha moment that influenced our product thinking, that the ability to ask questions is extremely valuable.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to the days that we're living now, there's a lot of talk on the agentic agents for almost everything, and there's a huge opportunity for specific sectors, which from sales to logistics, so on. What are some of the challenges that the AI agents builders face today?
Right. So one of the biggest challenges is that in most cases, agents are on the spectrum between a prompt, right? You are a salesperson, your goal is to sell these products. Here's a bunch of products. Good luck, right? That's the most naive approach. One notch up, right? The next level would be through MCP, you give it access to the database of products, or if it's a small number of products, you give it access to the CRM, right? To be able to have more context about the customer. And again, you have the prompt, and now it's more informed, right? So it's in principle supposed to do better. The next level is when you go beyond just giving it access to data in order to inform it, but actually you let it ask questions and understand the nuances. And this is where most agents fail today. So, for example, if an agent is attempting to troubleshoot a certain technical issue, right, through tech support, they're going to struggle with the nuance that maybe if you just look across 500 customers and you see that there is a certain pattern, a certain regularity behind those failures, behind those issues, you would be able to pinpoint the root cause and be much more effective. But in order to do this, you need to start combining structured data and unstructured data. In the structured data that you use, you need to be able to go beyond just querying it. You need to be able to scan it across a broad range of ideas. And that's precisely the realization that we had and that led to the evolution of SparkBeyond into the agentic world, right? Because agents essentially, they sort of KPIs, the same metrics that their human counterparts would have, right? A salesperson would be measured by conversion rate, right? Or a customer support agent would be measured according to the escalation rate, resolution rate, customer satisfaction, etc. So that's good because that allows comparing to human-driven baselines. Second thing, it allows us to create different policies for reinforcement learning and fine-tuning, right? We have some ground truth, and that leads to the ability to create systems that continuously improve.
Yeah, which that is something where the human in the loop comes in terms of, or
The human in the loop is optional.
okay,
It helps where relevant, but once you have the ability to actually see the outcome, observe the outcome of your actions as an agent in the real world, that's the feedback loop that you need. So if you think about the likes of AlphaGo, and they actually did not need any human in the loop because they operate in an environment where they immediately get feedback for every action that they make. It's not different for agents. That's the beauty.
interesting. Sergey, you work with closely with Fortune 500 companies and system integrators. What have you learned about human resistance to AI recommendations, and how do you bridge that gap between insights and action?
Yeah, that's such an important question because there is no easy solution to this. As long as we humans make decisions, we are biased, right? And there is a very good evolutionary reason why we are biased, right? So biases are essentially just short circuits that enable us to make decisions fast, right? And that's something that we need in order to be able to survive. It requires much more energy when you need to choose between the reasoning mode versus the intuition mode, right? Just like LLMs have two modes of with thinking or without thinking. It's not different than the way that we as humans operate. Our biases, in many cases, stand between us and the correct answer. The correct answer may be counterintuitive. It may contradict our own experience. And one of the biases is that we would give more importance to our own experience than the collective experience. So what is the solution to this? No simple answer, unfortunately. What we've seen work best is transparency, right? So if you just give an answer, it's harder to trust. If you are able to explain answers, they're easier. But there is a problem here because LLMs are very good at convincing us humans, right? And making us believe them, even when the explanation or the rationale is actually incorrect but coherent. So this coherent nonsense is a psychological, I would say, Achilles heel that we have as humans. One of the ways to address this is to ground the explanations in evidence. So that's actually one of the things that we do at SparkBeyond is we empower LLMs with very granular and high precision data that allows them to contextualize and provide those factual anchors into their explanation.
Interesting. And what are some important skills to build for the next generation to be able to thrive in the era of AI?
Yeah, I keep thinking as a father of 6 and 8 years old. I keep thinking about what are they going to do once they finish school, right? And I struggle with this. because it's hard to ignore the trends, right? Where across more and more benchmarks, AI is demonstrating superiority, right? So it is very well possible that we are less than a decade away from automation of knowledge work. We know that there are two schools of thought, but in this scenario, there are very important questions. What is the role, the purpose, the meaning of us as humans? And this is something that I really like the perspective of Bill Gates. He keeps talking about this, where he basically reminded us that jobs and careers are a relatively recent invention. Thousands of years ago, and for many hundreds of years ago, there were no careers.
Yeah.
Right. So people were not depressed and felt lack of purpose as a result of this. There are two skills that stand out. The first one is critical thinking. It's so important given the fact that machines, AI, as we mentioned, are so good at convincing us to believe anything they say. But the second thing is we also live in the post-truth era, right? And what do you trust? What sources do you believe? Right? For there are so many controversial topics now that it's very easy to shape our own opinions, shape opinions of a generation through an algorithm. So I think it's really important to empower the next generation to be critical thinkers. And the
Yeah.
second thing, the second skill, which I find very important, is once you have this ability to think critically and you understand that there is no way but sometimes rely on your own judgment, you need to build this muscle. So even if you do not need this for your job, for your career, you want to be able to reason really well, right? I would say these two skills, they reinforce each other, right? You don't need vast knowledge, but you really want the ability to think
Yeah.
in this way.
Yeah, because the knowledge now it's on demand, right? So you just hit the button and it does it for you. But the fact of the matter, how can you filter, like what you said, like what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is not true, and that I think it's a huge problem that I can see, that the critical thinking part. Like for example, I tell you, once you start to get so addicted to the tools, you start to kind of like just give that power to the tool, not thinking too much. And then all of a sudden you start to like just give that to the tools. Your brain start to just work in a way that just giving away that critical thinking. So this is, I can see for the young generation is going to be very difficult. For our generations, probably it's different because we're pretty much we're born in a time where we kind of like we had experienced the fax machine and
Yes.
the cable phone and but then they haven't, right? So what is the reference? So my question, like, how can you know to reference it? Okay, what is right and what is wrong, right?
It's extremely difficult. I don't think I'm best positioned to answer this question,
Yeah.
but I'm very worried about how fragile democracies are, how it's possible to to shape entire mindsets of generations.
Yeah.
That's something that of course governments and regulation are behind. Very important ethical questions, very important. They go way beyond technology, right? So it's ethics and psychology. Yeah.
So, Sergey, in terms of the bold, bold awards, we when we host people like you and others in these podcasts, we always like to get the perspective, your individual perspective about the word bold. What does that mean to you personally?
Yeah, it's thinking, it's imagining what the world is going to look like 1 decade forward, which is not easy, right? We live in exponential times.
Yeah.
You don't need to predict, but you want to discover certain aspect of the future that you're extremely passionate about and excited about, and that energizes you to pursue and realize that. So it's about how far into the future you throw your mental anchor into. So that's one metaphor for being bold.
Great. Well, Sergey, so great to have you here. Thank you for joining me in this Bold Talk series and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Until that time, take care, be great, and be bold always. Bye bye, my
Thank you,
friend.
Epi. Bye. Take
Thank
care.